You're listening to the Mastermind Parenting Podcast with Randi Rubenstein, episode 52. Hey, podcast listeners. If you happen to have a strong-willed kid who is kind of pushing every one of your buttons lately, I have a resource for you. I made you guys a free guide where you're going to get some tools and tips and strategies to quickly get on the road to creating a happier household. I know you're pulling your hair out. I wanted to make you something so you could start getting some quick wins and building some momentum. So if you want to grab your copy, just go to mastermindparenting.com/free guide. And I hope you enjoy it. My name is Randi Rubenstein, and welcome to the Mastermind Parenting Podcast, where we believe when your thoughts grow, the conversations in your home flow. Well, hi guys, how are you today? I wanted to make you a podcast with some excerpts from a recent workshop I did that I think you guys will find helpful. There's 3 different clips here, and if you happen to be a parent that has a shy child, I think you're really going to like the second clip. I know a lot of people, a lot of us, we get so worried about how our kids are doing socially. And I relate a story of a mom that I talked to recently who was just really worried about her daughter who was shy. And so if you were shy, or if you happen to have a shy child, I think that you're really going to connect with this episode. And there's 2 other clips, and I think it's just some good teaching. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm kind of tooting my own horn. When I listen back to it, you're going to have to just like pretend there's not a little tiny bit of background noise. Just know that I did the best I could, but I wanted to record these workshops because I just kind of wanted to listen back and see what I could do better or do differently. And there really was some good teaching in this workshop. And so because you just never know, you never know exactly, I had come in with like a shell and an outline, and I know what I want to get accomplished, but I just never totally know what story is going to pop out of my mouth or exactly how I'm going to explain something this time. And so sometimes I listen back and I'm like, oh, I like the way I explained that. That makes a lot of sense. I think that people are going to connect with that. So there were a few concepts here, and I like the way that I explained it, and I think that you guys will find it helpful. And ultimately, this workshop was titled Why Our Kids Push Our Buttons and What We Can Do About It. It probably wasn't titled exactly that, but it was something about kids pushing our buttons. And so if you have kids that frequently push your buttons, just know I created this workshop specifically for this issue. You're not alone. I think many of us, I think every human parent, I don't know that there's there are non-human parents, but every human parent that I know of gets triggered and can identify with our kids pushing our buttons. So if you have kids that push your buttons on the reg, I think you're going to connect with this podcast. So enjoy.
I believe that parenting is something that we think is supposed to be innate and natural. And when we have these kids that are pushing our buttons and we find ourselves in what I call the parent gap, which is the gap between the parent you want to be and the parent you are during the real life moments, right? Like that's the universe rising up to meet you and to say, it's time to learn some new tools. And yes, motherhood and that maternal, fierce love and instinct, it is innate. It is. We all know it is. And in our modern world, there are things that we can learn that help us evolve to a place that our parents didn't know about. Most of our parents didn't know about. And I think this is just part of the human condition. I think this is what we are meant to do. We are meant to be willing to be vulnerable and courageous enough to go and learn new tools so that we can say, I don't know everything. I don't know how to handle this, but I do know that I don't want to be yelling at my child and seeing that look on their face and feeling like we're on opposing teams. That feels unnatural. That's why we feel guilty about it later, because we know it's not supposed to be that way. But our brains have been programmed in a very specific way because people didn't know different, and the world was a different place back then. And as we are raising these kids who literally, we don't even know the careers they're gonna have. Like the future our world is changing at a more rapid pace than ever before in the history of mankind. So like they're gonna create their own jobs. We don't know what the future holds. And so we have to be willing to learn how to do this differently, because our kids are the future change makers and innovators and thought leaders, and we cannot have them coming to adulthood from a broken place. So I love getting to talk with parents at the stage that you guys are, because it's like you really have the ability to change your children's trajectory just by being willing to learn something new. So I applaud you guys for being here. I applaud you people for listening or tuning in from the comfort of your car or your bed, because you could be watching Netflix or the Today Show or going and having coffee with your friends. And you're here. You're the kind of parents that listen to something that helps you to learn something new. So I think it's a beautiful thing. And I just want to recognize and acknowledge all of you for being here. Okay, so I want to tell you guys about a mom I talked to recently. And she hopped on my calendar, and I have some things for you guys to fill out. So after I talk to you guys today, if anyone's like, oh my gosh, I need this lady to help me, just know you can fill out this thing, you can get in touch with me, and we'll hop on the phone just like I did with this mom I talked to the other day. So she fills out this questionnaire, and the reason I have her fill out the questionnaire is because, as I told you guys, like I feel like I'm so excited. Anytime I get with you guys, I want to be able to just like get to the meat of the issue. So a lot of times if you hop on the phone, it's like 45 minutes later before I find out the meat of the issue. But if I have you fill out something first, we hop on the phone and I kind of know what it is. So we hop on the phone, and the thing that stuck out to me was she had a 5-year-old kindergartner and 2-year-old twins, and she said, if I had to describe the main issue, it's that my 5-year-old daughter, she's very shy. And she really, like when we go to birthday parties, she just wants to stay with me. She just wants to stay close. And I knew that was the main issue. What you guys are learning here today, you're gonna leave here, and you're gonna be like, yes, this is great. I'm totally using all these things and these tools. And the problem is that 95% of the time, the place from where we operate is not the part of our brain that takes in the information that you're taking in here today. Because all the information you're taking in here today goes to your conscious brain, goes to your thinking brain. And it's our subconscious brain that comes online about 95% of the time. So the innate part of us that is a parent, and the reason why we get so triggered when our kids push our buttons, the innate part really has to do with our survival state, and we go into a state of fight or flight. And that's really like that's from that primal part of our brain from like when we were cave people. And really that's the part of our brain that protected us when there was a tiger in the jungle. And you had to like be on the lookout to make sure that tiger wasn't gonna attack you or your cave people, your little cave children, right? And in our modern world, sometimes those tigers are whining little tiny tigers. And we go into a state of fight or flight. That's when we're in a triggered state. And it's very primal for us as humans, okay? And that is your subconscious brain. That's what happens when you're in the parent gap. And that's why we find ourselves doing all the things we swore we were never gonna do. I'm never gonna yell at my kids, I'm never gonna, and we go to that place. Because unfortunately, we think, as humans, we're always scanning our environment for something that could be wrong. That's what comes natural for us. That's why so often we go to that negative place. Like anytime I say to people, what do you want? Well, I'm sick of this. It's easy to point out all the things that are negative. And we do that really as a protective measure, right? This is the cool thing about being evolved humans. I mean, as we've evolved, like our brains have increased tremendously in size. So as we've evolved, what we've learned is that we can reprogram our subconscious brain. We can reprogram all the programs that we received as little tiny people. And it all starts with awareness. So today, what I'm teaching you, okay, and some of this you may have heard before, I'm really just trying to heighten your awareness today, because that's where all change starts. And as your awareness becomes heightened, your curiosity does too. And so I just want y'all to know, I'm gonna take you through a series of exercises to show you what comes next after the awareness stage, how we actually reprogram our brains and become the parents we want to be, no matter what our kids are doing. It doesn't matter if they're whining, it doesn't matter if they're pushing everyone, like they're not pushing our buttons anymore, because we have learned how to master our minds so that we can actually help them, because little kids live in their emotional brains. Their subconscious brains are being programmed right now. And so that's why they're so quick to get the meltdown and quick to go to all these places. Like, they're not developmentally there yet where they can really think rationally when they're hungry and tired. So we stop taking it personally. We stop making all these behaviors that are totally normal about disrespect and about all these things that have to do with us when they don't have to do with us. And then we start to effectively teach them the tools to help their developing brains develop in the best way possible, okay? So this mom that came to me, okay, I knew shy was the word. She wrote all this stuff, and I said to her, let me ask you a quick question. She said, yeah. I said, were you described as a shy child? She said, I was. How did you know? And I said, I don't know, I just had a hunch. And she said, I said, were you proud of that? And she said, well, not particularly. And then she quickly went into, but I wasn't the most popular kid, but I always had a friend or two, and it was fine. And now I was like, I get it, you're grown up, you're doing fine. You're doing just fine, right? I said, and when the word shy is used, have you ever heard it used in a positive connotation? Ever? She said, no. I said, exactly. I said, people think that when you use the word trauma, it has to be something big and major. And I said this to the woman yesterday on the plane. I said, the word trauma is like something you've been through. I said, but the truth of the matter is as humans, we've all gone through these little micro traumas in our life. And as humans, we all have this need to belong. It's literally on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's like right under food, shelter, water, belonging, community. When you are described as the shy child, did you feel like you belonged? And she said, quite often not. And I said, tell me a little bit about your family. She said, well, I was the youngest, and I had 2 older siblings, and they were 4 and 5 years older than me. And they were really outgoing, and I was quieter. And I said, and did you feel like you fit in with your siblings? She said, not particularly. I said, exactly. You didn't even necessarily feel like you belonged in your own family. And then when you went out into the world and you had to stick close to your mom, you weren't sure where you fit in. She said, that's true. I said, and your brain wants to tell you right now, it's fine, I turned out fine. But when you see your daughter go through moments that remind your brain of painful moments you went through, you experience that lack of belonging, those little micro traumas all over again. And she said, that's true. That's absolutely true. I never thought about it. And I said, we don't think about it. But usually the things about our kids that trigger us the most, or the things we're worried about the most about them, somehow it reminds our brains of a time in our lives that felt painful.
Hey, podcast listeners, if you're ready to take this learning to the next level and get some accountability and some hand-holding, I encourage you to schedule a call with me and hop on my calendar. And to do that, all you need to do is go to randyrubenstein.com/discovery. That's randyrubenstein.com/discovery. Can't wait to connect with you.